When I get older, losing my hair, many years from now, will you still be sending me a Valentine?
Good afternoon and welcome to Berkshire Senior TV. I'm John Lutz, the Executive Director of Elder Services of Berkshire County, and we have a guest today from the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, Peg McDonough, and we are going to talk a little bit about age-friendly and maybe some villages and maybe some other things, but maybe start with Peg, if you'd kind of like to introduce yourself and tell us how you got here.
Okay, well, as you said, Peg McDonough, and I'm a staff planner at Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, and my main job there is to coordinate age-friendly Berkshires. I consider myself lucky because I arrived in the fall, right as the action plan was being finalized, and so now I kind of have the fun task of starting to do implementation. That's when we see the plan turn into reality, hopefully, and so I'm really very excited about it. And since September, I've been kind of catching up with not only publishing the plan, but building out our website, which is agefriendlyberkshires.com. And I've been meeting with all the many committees that helped to craft the plan from the 2+ years of outreach that were done, and kind of just to get up to speed about where everybody was at. And so now we're ready to roll. So I'm very excited.
And just for those one or two folks who are tuning in and have never heard of age-friendly Berkshires, can you tell us kind of in a nutshell what this is about?
Sure. Age-friendly Berkshires is really an outgrowth of an international recognition that our populations are changing, not only in Berkshire County, but across the United States and, in fact, the world, basically based on the baby boom that occurred after World War II. What that really means is that our population across the country is getting older, and the younger generation has not, in terms of overall numbers, hasn't quite gotten to where we are with the number of seniors. So there's a real focus among older adults to say, hey, you know, we're the majority now. We should be able to create the future that we want, the retirement that we want, and this action plan grew out of that recognition. And we've done a couple of years of planning, and we've come up with a really wonderful plan, and we're ready to roll it out to the public.
Now, when someone hears age-friendly, does that mean any age, all ages, some ages?
Yes, actually, it is all ages.
Right.
We focused initially on the needs of an aging population, but in fact, we're all aging all the time. So this plan focuses on kind of looking at what we're doing now and assessing how well we are serving our population, young or old. The idea is if we're going to fix it for the young and the very young and the very old, we're going to fix it for everybody in between. So really that's the focus of the plan, and we think we have come up with a fairly comprehensive program that people can adapt to their own communities, their own businesses, and so on.
And I know we've participated as an agency, and I participated in the reading. I know because that question comes up, but I think you can find I don't think there's anything you're going to do that make it older age friendly that's not going to at the same time make it younger age friendly. It's not like you're going to do something for elders that's going to make it exclusionary to younger people, whether they be teenagers, very young children, middle age, whatever. It's not like any of those things are going to exclude some other party. All of them are going to benefit the entire community.
Right. A rising tide floats all boats.
Right. Yeah.
So
but if you think about making it friendly for elders, then you're really making it friendly for everybody else at the same time.
Absolutely.
Right? So let's talk a little bit about. I just want to mention you are with the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. We are a community-wide agency, county-wide agency.
As are we.
As are you, and I think that's why that this has kind of come to be the home of Age Friendly.
Right.
Because you look at the entire county.
That's correct.
Okay. What about, and I know you have a document here, you know, those things don't just kind of germinate out of the ground,
no.
sunshine, everything like this.
That's right.
Talk about how we went from point A to a document.
Okay.
And how do we, how does that process work?
About 2.5 years ago, a coalition of people, actually started by Bobby Orsi of Home Instead Senior Care, approached Berkshire Regional Planning Commission and said, hey, here's the trend of population in our county, as well as tying it into the larger initiative worldwide. And she said, we should do something. It was literally that type of a conversation over coffee. So they pulled together a coalition of people representing all different groups in Berkshire County, not only the agency-wide, the county-wide organizations, but nonprofits, government leaders, town and city government leaders, politicians, faith-based communities, businesses, anybody who might be interested in the changing demographic and how it would impact their work and mission. So, so for the past 2.5 years, these folks have been working together with a real committee structure, not only a task force, which are the partner organizations, but a smaller steering committee, working groups around the 8 areas of livability that we looked at, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But working committees, and then we have a group of active agers who are really just activist citizens who wanted to be involved somehow and certainly were very anxious to be part of something like this. So they got together and we did some public outreach sessions, listening sessions really. We went out and said, tell us about your experience of aging in your towns. And people, kind of rattled things off. Oh, it'd be great if I could, take the bus or have a taxi ride that didn't cost me an arm and a leg, or be able to, my eyesight isn't as good as it used to be. I need some way to get around other than driving. It would be wonderful if we can improve our transit system. A lot of people talked about housing, how they have big old houses and they're thinking, geez, this is a lot of upkeep. Wouldn't it be nice to move somewhere that's more appropriate? I'm getting a little rickety in the knees. I would love a single level home. But we may not have the immediate replacement home for those folks. So some of the talk centered around types of housing that might be appropriate for older people. We looked at communication, how cities and towns communicate with residents, how we communicate with one another, about important information that's important for them to know, how people access community and health services, how inclusive we are. Are we really including all of our people, not just old people? Are we keeping them active, engaged, safe, and connected over the lifespan? So it's pretty complicated.
And I know that I sat in on some of those sessions and we participated in it, and it's a simple concept, but one that becomes pretty profound when you start to think about it across the county. Is people would like to stay where they are, would like to age where they are, their home, their hometowns in some cases, maybe the town that they've lived in for years and years and years, and they just like to stay there. That's a little more complicated than it sounds sometimes, as you point out, about housing and transportation and as people age and capabilities and support networks. But it really matches well with our mission at Elder Services about letting people live the highest quality of life possible where they wish, which is typically at home.
Aging in place.
Aging in place. But I think that's where it brings in kind of the policy things about do there need to be zoning changes? Do there need to be changes around streets or transportation or housing and that type of thing? So it's a simple concept of I just like to stay where I am. But it's not an easy implementation as a larger portion of the community continues to age.
Exactly, and it's not saying to people throw out everything you're doing. Let's just take a look at what we're doing. Who's providing what services? How is our town doing this for people? And see if we can tweak it just a little bit to make it a little more inclusive, a little more friendly to people as they age.
And just to pick up on that, I mean, this is in a sense, this is a voluntary effort.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just a group that we're just trying to say, hey, here's an opportunity. We think this could improve your community. Wouldn't you like to do that? But there's no. It's not like someone's coming in and saying,
"You must do this."
There's no, there's no statute behind it.
None whatsoever. And really, the good thing is we're not alone. Counties and cities and towns across the United States are also doing this. So, at any given time, you can jump on the internet and type in age-friendly cities, and you'll come up with a list. And so we're fortunate to have joined with AARP's Livable Communities effort. They have supported the development of this plan, and they are kind of the nexus for all that is going on across the country. So it's very dynamic, and again, nobody's telling anybody what to do, but it's something like, this makes perfect sense. Given our situation, let's give it a try.
Which is a great segue, because I think the governor recently, just in the last couple of weeks,
Yep.
He mentioned in his State of the State address, or State of the Commonwealth, sorry,
Right.
that he has applied, and hopefully Massachusetts become, I think, only the second
One in the
second
country.
age-friendly state in the nation.
That's right, and we were thrilled. The timing could not have been better, as if it was arranged
Right.
that way. But he did announce in his address that Massachusetts is to become an age-friendly state, and that's helpful because it gives a recognition, a formal recognition on the state level, that this is something that we should be focusing on. And presumably that will come with not only technical support from the state, but hopefully some grant funding that'll help our communities get going if they choose.
And maybe that's a good chance, because I know there are other cities, other towns. I think we're the only county that's doing it as a
Yes.
collective county effort, but there are other cities and around the state that are doing it.
Absolutely. Boston is one of them. Cape Cod is another. Smaller, well, larger cities, larger in population than Berkshire County, but ours is somewhat unique in that we are the only county
Right.
that's going whole hog.
Trying to promote it across the whole county.
That's right, and that's unique. And we also have no county government.
Right.
So we have 32 municipalities, and essentially it is a voluntary effort, but we think once the logic is presented, and it just would be great for us to all work together for it.
Now, I know since you've come, one of the things you've been working on is the website.
Yes.
So maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about that, where people could go and get info.
Thank you. On December 1st, we launched agefriendlyberkshires.com, and that is meant to be the hub of the Age Friendly Berkshires movement, if you will call it that. And it's a place for people to not only receive communications from the various committees, but as we build the website, we hope to include what individual towns are doing. We hope to put up resource material, so possible grant funding, guidance documents, all kinds of material that will be helpful to get people thinking about what they might do in their own towns. So right now, what you'll see when you visit the website is really it's explaining the action plan and what's included. But again, there are a few resource items there, including the one that's really our first one, which is a homeowner's guide to adapting their current home to be more age friendly. So that's up, and people can download it if they'd like. And there's a few other reports there about age-friendly movements across the country. So there's some good ideas that are already posted. And then again, we're going to build it out. So it's more of a tool for people.
And it would seem that just being involved, there's not really the expectation that that every town is going to do this exactly the same.
Right. Absolutely not. I think what's great about it is it's very flexible, and they can do what they want to do. There's plenty of places to start. Again, we looked at the eight areas of livability, including housing, transportation, communication, civic engagement, how people become engaged in issues in their town, volunteerism, employment, really the built and the non-built environment across our region, and it gives plenty of places to start. So whatever is on our town's individual agenda for what's important to them can be the starting point for them.
So if there's a group of people or whatever, or even an individual that in their town, like there's a particular issue around communication perhaps, or inclusion that they really want to focus on, they can do that, and the next town might focus on something completely different.
Absolutely. But at the same time, they can share what they're doing, so that if a town that's in the northern part of the county can emulate what is being done somewhere else, and vice versa.
And the hope is that eventually, all 32 are having some effort, and it becomes kind of a collective impact.
Exactly.
Okay. What about, let's talk a little bit about the action plan itself. How do you and the Planning Commission, how do documents like this, like, so what you've created, what happens now? How do you get it out there and get people to start using it and pulling it apart or whatever?
Well, we're hoping to use our launch event, which is coming up, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But we're planning a road show, and basically we're going to bring a little team of folks, some of our committee people, around to various venues, city and town boards and meetings if they invite us, businesses, groups that are pre-existing, like chambers of commerce and so on, anybody who will listen to us, let's put it that way. And we'll just explain what the plan is, why it makes sense for us, and ask if they would like to become involved. So that's the first step, and that's probably a spring event once the weather warms. And our action plan launch event is the first step, and that's coming up on Tuesday, March 13th at 8:30 a.m. at the Berkshire Hills Country Club in Pittsfield. That's a public event. Everybody's invited. And we will also preview what's in the plan, explain it, what it means to be age-friendly, and again, garner support for people who want to join a committee or get going in their towns.
So when someone or when a community decides to become age-friendly, from the 10,000-foot view, what is it that is, what's the aspiration there? Where are you saying, well, we want to go there, we want to go to this place? What's that look like?
Well, I think initially there'll be some hesitation among every town, just because it's a little amorphous.
Right.
But I think honestly, just start somewhere. Pick something fairly easy, and look at it hard and say, hey, how can we do better? And maybe involve some citizen volunteers who are older, who might want to say, we'll help you. If you, and so we're just asking people to just try it.
Right.
And see if it works, and then go bigger next time.
Yeah, and I think and again, in reading some of the materials and in my own involvement, I think part of it is just that, kind of just be intentional. Like, okay,
Exactly.
we're gonna start to think about things in this way.
Right.
And so as we think about new things, we're gonna, is that age friendly? Is it welcoming to everybody? Is it inclusive to everybody? Not just kids, not just elders, but
Everybody.
if you hit one group, you're probably going to hit the other group.
Sure.
So it's never meant to be exclusionary. It's meant, just be thinking about it.
Right.
Could we be more age? Could we create walking paths or something that would make
Sure.
it easier to get from outside of town to into town, or
Right.
and if that works for elders, well, then it works for kids on bicycles too, or
Absolutely.
things like that.
Sure. And intergenerational things, which is the ideal, inclusive of everyone. And I think that's something that's fairly easy to do, a good place to start too.
Now, talk a little bit about how kind of the behind the scenes. I know there's been a lot of people involved in this, but so maybe people would like to hear just a little bit of like how broad that kind of behind the curtain group is a pretty big group.
Oh, well, you're right. We do have at least 40 community groups, nonprofits, including Elder Services and Berkshire Regional Planning. But we also have a lot of municipal representation from, you name it, select boards, councils on aging, health departments, et cetera. We also have businesses who, you wouldn't think, initially that would be a concern, but really if the market is changing, if your population is changing, and therefore your target market, your customers are older, maybe you should be thinking, gee, is my business actually age-friendly? And am I attracting them to my business?
Is it an opportunity?
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, we do have many groups. We've divided them into working committees just to make it easier. And going forward, when we're starting to implement, it's going to be probably even more complicated, because the groups will be working on their own, and yet they have the obligation to communicate with each other to make sure progress is being made across the board. Where do you need help? How can the core committee find you the assistance you require to make it happen for you, for your town or your business. So the communication piece becomes very important, and that of course gets back to the website, but also we're developing a newsletter so that the committees can report out what they're doing, and then we can have a resource section, so it's like, okay, if you need help with this, call this person or this group. So that becomes a bit of a juggling act, and that's something we're really intently focusing on now, how to really roll this forward and make sure we're all on the same page.
And is there a concern about the relationship between Berkshire Regional Planning, Age Friendly, yourself, and kind of town structure? You know, because it might be that there's a group and they get together and they are excited about something, but it's it's this structure over here that's going to have to bring it to fruition, kind of thing. I mean. Yeah.
Well, actually, we're trying to keep the communication piece. Obviously, is key. But you're right. I can't possibly attend all those meetings.
Right.
I mean, I'd probably do nothing else, which I will attend as many as I can. But there will come a time where we have to just let people do what they need to do for themselves, for their town, for their business and communities. So it becomes kind of a voluntary resolution, if you will, to say, yes, we will sign on and keep communicating with everybody else. I mean, it really does require them to say, yes, we will participate with you.
And if someone is watching this program because they have insomnia and they're trying to get to sleep, but they're struck and they're inspired and they want to get involved, what would be the best way to do that?
Well, they can certainly go to the website, agefriendlyberkshires.com. There is a way to contact us. They can write in what their interest is. There is also a list of the 8 areas of livability that they're interested in if they have a particular topic. And they can check that off, and it'll come to me, and I'll reach out to them and see where they'd like to be involved.
So while there is a quote-unquote institution involved as kind of a backbone organization, curating everything, really it's a grassroots,
absolutely,
diverse, and dispersed kind of effort that's going to make this happen.
Exactly, and the key is really just to keep all those groups communicating with one another. And it is a challenge, but I think certainly once people get rolling, I think they'll be pretty enthusiastic about it, and it'll be easy for them to know where they can go. Just shoot me an email, just so we know what you're up to. Do you need help, et cetera.
Going to switch gears a little bit, just because we have another topic we're going to talk about. I think it falls under the same umbrella of Age Friendly, but I know that you guys are also promoting the exploration and perhaps creation of what are called villages.
That's right.
Not in the technical sense of,
not a real incorporated village,
but in the sense of kind of a self-supporting entity. And I thought if you could just share a little bit about that.
Sure. We were fortunate to receive a small grant to do a feasibility study about the village concept, the village movement. And really what it is a virtual village. An intentional group of people get together in a particular area, usually a town, and say, how can we help our older residents stay connected? Because sometimes, as you know, because of the changes that you undergo as you age, sometimes you're less mobile.
More isolated.
More isolated, and plus we're a very rural area, so people are out in the country, and it's sometimes hard for them to remain connected, particularly if they don't have children to take care of them. So this is another way that communities are becoming age-friendly. They're creating a virtual village, and they can call it anything they want, but really it is a grassroots, homegrown effort for neighbor to help neighbor. They're generally completely volunteer, and people join the village not only as a member, to receive services from other members, but to also sign up as a volunteer to help their neighbor. So it's an overt way of connecting people, and it's really kind of tightening the network that creates a community. And it's a way to also reach out to those who might be isolated or less inclined to join things, or less inclined to maybe come to the senior center, for example.
Yeah, and I think I remember when this was getting started, the village network seems to be largely focused on urban and some suburban areas,
Right.
but it hasn't really come to more rural, smaller town areas. It hasn't really been tried in those, and I think that's why Berkshire County was an interesting place to get the grant. Was like, hey, you've got some communities where you could really see, but yet we're not part of a large urban network.
It's true. The first village in the country, believe it or not, it was at Beacon Hill in Boston. So right in the heart of Boston, and there were older residents who were saying, here we are, we're widows, we're divorced, some of us are alone. How can we help each other? Now they're fortunate in that they're in the city,
Right.
they have great transportation.
They're close to each other.
That's
yeah.
exactly right. They're really close. But so the Department of Housing, Conservation, and Development, when they approached us about this feasibility study, said, we know how it works in cities. Do you think it would work in a rural area?
Right.
And we said, well, let's give it a try. So we are holding 3 just community conversations about what the village concept is and what it might do for us, just to see if people are interested. And my sense is, just by my going out and describing
Right.
to the folks who are helping us host what it was, they were all interested. They were saying, yeah, when do we get going?
Sure.
So those listening sessions are coming up in February, actually next week, February 12th, February 15th, and another one on March 7th. And those will be in Adams, Florida, and North Adams at the senior centers.
Right.
And they're at varying times. I think the first one is from 2 to 4 p.m. At the Adams Senior Center. And again, it's just we'll show a little video about what villages are and get the conversation rolling about how they might work locally.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time to come today. It's been a great and very quick half hour, and we'll look forward to maybe having you back next year for an update.
Oh, great. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much for watching.
Till 2:45, would you lock the door? Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? Dum 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 dum.